Good evening, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And tonight I'm joined by Dolores Pierce, also known as D. Pierce, who is the host of Around the World, okay, with D and Friends. Hi,
Happy to be
D.
here.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm happy to be here, and you have an exciting show tonight. A lot going on.
Yeah, I think it is a lot going on, and it should be a very exciting show. Uh, okay, let's begin by sharing it. How about that?
Yes, that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, thank you. I should do some of that myself.
Yes, it's very important.
Yes, it does help, especially with the Facebook crowd.
Yes, everybody knows you're live.
Yes, so they know you're live. Ah, okay.
Oh, hello, Steve and Wolf Brandis here.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good to see Steve.
Yep, Steve's here early. A number of people are here early. So, let us get started with the first piece on China's hypersonic technology. Okay, a piece appeared okay, in the UN's review. It's written by an author by the name of Hua Ben. Uh, I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. It might be Hua Ben, uh, but I try. The title of it is A Watershed Hypersonic Technology Breakthrough, China's New Hypersonic Air-to-Air Missile. He wrote this on January 25th, or it was published at the UN's review anyway, January 25th, 2025. Uh, I just sort of clicked into something else, but stop that. So here's a picture of hypersonic missile. I don't know if that's the air-to-air kind. But anyway, the piece starts off. There's an arms race going on among the major powers to develop hypersonic missile technology.
Mm-hmm.
Those are missiles flying above Mach 5 speed, roughly 6,400 kilometers per hour, which I guess is roughly 4,000 miles per hour. Russia's recent test use of the Oreshnik hypersonic missile in Ukraine was observed with awe, and the U.S. has also tested its first hypersonic missile, the Dark Eagle. The surface to earth surface intermediate range boost glide weapon. China leads the world in the development and deployment of hypersonic weapon systems. Well, I never knew that. It's an interesting claim. I thought that Russia was leading the world in hypersonic technology. But they first deployed the DF 17 hypersonic weapon in 2017. Subsequently, China has fielded more submarine fired, ground based, and air launched hypersonic missiles, such as the DF 21D, the DF 26B, the DF 27, the DF 31, the CJ 100, and the YJ 21. Each features different range and speed. They're also designed for different target types: ground targets, maritime targets, or surface to air defense. Some of these missiles sport nicknames such as Carrier Killers and Guam Express. China has just upped its game again. A new hypersonic air to air missile was recently unveiled by the China Airborne Missile Academy, CAMA, the division of the aviation industry of China, and the main developer and supplier of air-to-air missiles to the Chinese Air Force. This is a game-changing breakthrough. Everybody uses that term, of course, including me.
Mm-hmm.
Current hypersonic missiles are primarily designed to go after ground targets or slow-moving naval targets. China is the only country known to have deployed hypersonic missiles against naval targets such as carriers. Ooh. For a long time, the ability to create air-to-air missiles with such a high speed was considered little more than a pipe dream. The higher a missile speed, the more difficult it is to make a turn, especially when aiming at an aircraft that is moving much faster than ground vehicles or ships. The main technical challenge for hypersonic air-to-air missile is management of heat. At speed over Mach 5, air-to-air missiles experience extreme aerodynamic thermal environments, and the missile needs to constantly adjust its flight attitude when tracking a target, which leads to changes in surface temperature over time at different parts. The entire missile needed to be able to withstand prolonged exposure to temperatures exceeding 1200 degrees Celsius, which is 2190 degrees Fahrenheit. This meant that not only the front, but other parts of the missile, including the engine, need to be equipped with comprehensive and efficient thermal protection systems. In the face of extreme heat flow impacts, air-to-air missiles may suffer thermal damage, structural deformation, and even destruction. The missile's internal electronics may be disrupted. How to effectively simulate this complex and transient aerodynamic thermal environment on the ground has become one of the key issues to ensure the safe service of the thermal protection system. To find suitable thermal insulation materials for air-to-air missiles, Chinese scientists at CASA have used extreme testing methods, including burning samples with oxyacetylene flames used for welding metals, lasers, and high-temperature plasmas. The plasma flames could reach 16,000 degrees Celsius, according to the project team. That, my friends, is way hotter than the surface temperature of the sun. Details of the final evaluations of full-scale missile prototypes were given in a peer-reviewed paper published in Chinese language journal Equipment Environmental Engineering last month. These evaluations were conducted in an arc-heated wind tunnel. Quote, by heating gas with an electric arc, this type of tunnel can generate hotter airflows reaching thousands to tens of thousands of degrees Celsius. The project team, led by senior scientists Cheng Gong and Wang Yimin, wrote in the paper. The arc-heated wind tunnel can operate continuously for an hour or more. But due to its enormous power consumption, it is, quote, super expensive, unquote, to run. Chung and Wang said. As a result, it is mainly used for the most challenging space missions, such as simulating the landing of Tianwen-1 spacecraft on Mars. Based on the technical breakthrough, the new Chinese hypersonic air-to-air missile, yet to be named, has undergone extreme heat resistance testing and is able to meet the stringent performance requirements of the PLA Air Force. PLA is the People's Liberation Army. The missile is believed to have an ultra-long range of 1,000 kilometers or more which can be traveled in 8 minutes at Mach 5. This is the first official confirmation of the existence of this mysterious weapon, which could pose an unprecedented threat to U.S. military aircraft, including the F-22, the F-35 stealth fighters, and the B-21 stealth bomber. In a simulated air combat exercise conducted in 2023, scientists with the Northwestern Polytechnical Institute armed a Chinese J-16, a 4.5 generation fighter, with this long-range missile that was able to climb to the edge of the atmosphere and then come down to an aircraft at hypervelocity. This has been seen by some of the military experts as one of the countermeasures being prepared by China in response to the potential threat posed by America's B-21. The detection range of mainstream airborne missile warning systems is less than 10 kilometers, or 6.2 miles, which would mean that from the time the alarm sounded to the missile's arrival, pilots would have less than 4 seconds to react. In the U.S. military, neither the B-21 nor widely used large air platforms, such as warning aircraft and tankers, can reach the speed of sound. Even the powerful F-22 can only accelerate to about Mach 2, making an escape unlikely. The introduction of this weapon has serious implications for global air combat strategies, especially for the U.S. military and its allies. The U.S. B-21 Raider, new stealth bomber, which with its stealth capabilities and long-range strike capabilities, represents the cutting edge of American air power. But the threat of hypersonic weapons could force a reconsideration of how such aircraft are deployed in contested airspace. The B-21 was designed with the assumption that adversaries would rely on traditional anti-air threats, such as surface-to-air missiles and fighter jets. The hypersonic missile, however, could engage even the most advanced stealth bombers at ranges far beyond the capabilities of conventional interception systems, making them vulnerable in ways previously unimagined. The development of air-to-air hypersonic missiles represents a new frontier in aerial warfare. These weapons offer far greater ranges and speeds than traditional air-to-air missiles, which are typically limited by their reliance on radar guidance and the necessity of in-flight updates from the launching platform. A hypersonic air-to-air missile, due to its sheer speed, could engage targets with little or no warning and without relying on extensive data links to ensure its accuracy. This dramatically changes the nature of air combat, as enemy aircraft, especially slow-moving tankers, bombers, and early warning platforms, will have limited options for evasion. The strategic implications of this technology are profound. Air forces must now rethink their defense strategies in the face of such advanced technology. The challenge is not only technological, but also economic. Hypersonic systems, due to their complex engineering and high operating costs, such as the expense of running advanced wind tunnels, represent a significant investment. As the hypersonic arms race continues, China's lead will force its adversaries to make huge investments in defensive measures. Bankrupting your enemy is part of Sun Tzu's art of war. The only thing I can see wrong with this article, and I'm not an expert on weapons, so I'm not sure I can evaluate the truth of it, but it seems very, very straightforward, okay, and very matter of fact. Okay, and if it is telling us the truth, then it's of course extremely significant and something that the competitors of China uh, can't afford to ignore and will have to counter. This last part, bankrupting your enemy, is part of Sun Tzu's Art of War, uh, of course, based on MMT. There is no bankrupting of the United States. That just isn't going to fly.
No, it's not going to fly, and it's constantly brought up.
Yes, I know. It's constantly brought up and it doesn't fly. And it's a weakness of many of the otherwise great articles and videos that we analyze here. Okay. But apart from that, I could see bankrupting the United States in resources, such as the materials needed to build hypersonic missiles, perhaps. But other than essentially running us out of real resources, uh, I don't see that it's possible to run us out of financial resources.
No.
But anyway, otherwise, this is a great piece and certainly informs us of many things that we did not know,
Mm-hmm.
including, in my case, how active China had been in developing hypersonic missiles, because all we hear about is the Russian hypersonic missiles or the Iranian hypersonic missiles. Mostly, we don't hear about the Chinese hypersonic missiles. That's why I thought this was a very important article for us to, dig into for our show tonight.
Yeah, they're very active in China.
Oh yeah, their research is very active. You're just constantly hearing about new technological advances of all kinds, and we seem to be getting far outdistanced in this particular realm, which is not really such a surprise when you consider the educational system in China,
Mm-hmm.
of course, and the very large population that China has to draw upon in order to uh, 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 get the engineers needed for these technology developments.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, China far outdistances us in producing engineers each year and will do so in the foreseeable future, in part because their educational system is free, but also because we just don't seem to have that many people willing to go into scientific, technological, and engineering fields. So there we are. So Steve Wolfbrand greets us, says hello, everybody. There's a wave came from Evelina. She checks in, and Sandy is here. Thank you very much, Sandy, for coming, and thank you very much for sharing. Steve has shared also. Thank you, Steve. Uh, and Evelina says anti FAFO, which I'm going to translate in a gentlemanly fashion as fool around and find out.
Yes.
But of course, you all know what the expression really means.
Yes, we do.
Steve Wolfman says, and the drones, yes, and the drones is right. Okay, and the AI, just having revelations over the last few days on the AI. And we covered two articles on that in each of the last two videos before this one. Uh, but boy, our software people and hardware people and our billionaires are going nuts, absolutely nuts about the DeepSeek system. I mean, I have to say, I can't stop laughing. It's because of the Schadenfreude of it all. We were so cocky about our lead in this respect. Greg Mallett is here. Hi, Greg. Sandy says hi, Greg, and Steve says hi, Gregory.
Hello. Hello, everyone. And Lana Dell says hello
Hi,
too.
Gregory. And here's Lana. Hi, all. I'm listening in the background because I have two courses to finish for work. Okay, thank you for arriving, Lana. Greg says, howdy, Steve and Lana. Okay. So, uh, let's get on with our second choice for the evening, which deals with the impact of the ceasefire on both the Israeli and Palestinian sides of the war. There was a wonderful video on that. Greg says, I'm eating a Rice Krispie treat. Okay. uh, there was a wonderful video on that uh, from the Judge Knapp show. Okay, and from Alistair Crook and his interview with Alistair Crook. And what Alistair had to say about the impact was extremely striking. So I'm going to play that video, and Dee and I will comment on it at various points. Okay, so I'll share that.
And she has.
I'll go back to the beginning. Skip the ad. Yeah, the judge is a Goldie.
Come and tell them the judge sent you.
Did you know that nearly 50 million Americans struggle with hearing loss? I'm 78, but I can hear like I was 27.
Alistair, good day to you. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure, of course. Is Benjamin Netanyahu on shaky ground politically, domestically?
And health, yes. That is very much the case. Because, as you know, that it.
Okay, I have to say, he's been on shaky ground for as long as I can remember. And somehow he always manages to survive. By all rights, he should have fallen long, long ago. But he just seems to hang on by the skin of his teeth. Still, as Alistair will make clear, okay, in this video, there are a number of different things going on now, which suggests that we are in the period before the fall. You check on
It was Netanyahu who was really did not want the, if you like, hostage deal to go through. He was not keen on it to go through because his right wing, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, and the right of the party, the right of the Netanyahu camp, all want to see, if you like, Gaza clean of all Arabs and it to be settled by Israeli settlers in their place. And therefore, one of the deals, when he signed, if you like, when he signed off in cabinet, not in the original deal, but he agreed to Smotrich, saying that at the end of the exchange of hostages, we will go back to war in Gaza. We will destroy Gaza. And that puts him at very much at odds with Trump. But there he has a catch-22 situation. Netanyahu, if he doesn't, if you like, blame Hamas and break the ceasefire and say it's all over and now we're going back to war, then his government will crash because Ben Gvir has left the government already. He had 6 seats, 7 seats, and Smotrich has 6. It is going to be very difficult to keep the government alive in those circumstances. It will be a major crisis. But I think more than that, something else very dramatic has happened in this period. You probably saw, many of the people watching will have seen the release of the 4 hostages, all of them, the Israeli army young ladies who were the observers of on the fence. All of those were released, and they came back, and as you saw, smiling, waving, and in very good health, and smartly dressed. And it's had a huge impact, as you can imagine, on Israeli public as a whole. They want the other hostages back now. I mean, it's much more determined. They saw them come back. They were in good health. They didn't make it to the hospital or anything. And indeed, those girls, they were in a car, and they have been filmed, and they said, well, we're very grateful to Al-Qassam for looking after us so well, feeding us and clothing us and looking after us. So there is a big shift, I think, in public sentiment. So for Netanyahu now to try...
Okay, just a note here. One of the things Alistair specializes in his commentary on Middle Eastern situations, that includes Iran, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Israel and Palestine, of course, what's going on in Egypt. He is always very alive and in tune to psychology of the situation and the way he thinks people are psychologically reacting to situations. He considers the psychological factors and the cultural factors to be very important in assessing what's going to happen on the conflict side. So he's focusing a lot on that here.
and sabotage it in order to be able to go back to putting the IDF into Gaza and destroying it and pushing more Palestinians out. It's going to be a lot more difficult. And it's going to be doubly difficult because what we've seen, I'd say it's an amazing sight. All the Palestinians from the north are heading back across the Netzarim Strip, which was the sort of no-go line, to northern Gaza. 1.5 million are arriving there, and they are cheering and in a victorious mood. We will never be displaced from this. This is where we're from. This is where we're staying. Well, no. I mean, the Israeli army have now 1.5 million Palestinians back in the area they thought they had completely cleared and emptied of Palestinians. How are they going to start? Are they going to start again? And what will that mean for Trump at the same time? Because Trump, if you like, well, and certainly Steve Witkoff nailed his cuts to the ceasefire, to having the exchange of hostages. I mean, he's committed on that. He's up for that now. He's bought into that. And so what would it mean for Trump if Netanyahu went for, if you like to say, declare the ceasefire breached, and therefore we're going to go back to war in Gaza, we're going to go back to bombing them, we're going to go back to destroying them. I think it'll put Netanyahu very much at odds with Trump. Trump will want the ceasefire to continue. He will certainly want an end to the massacres going on in Gaza in this period. But that is the secret core clause that was granted to Smotrich, not in the original ceasefire of that sort in it. It is in the cabinet meeting, the 6-hour cabinet meeting that followed it. He made this undertaking that there would be a return, there would be no part.
5 words you pronounce wrong 2 years before your brain starts.
To the ceasefire.
Well, then this is not a ceasefire if Netanyahu believes and has told his right-wing supporters that he on his own can declare it invalid and move the troops back in. This is just a charade intended to please Joe Biden in the death throes of his administration and give Donald Trump crowing rights.
Yeah, it's not a ceasefire in the sense that we're only at the first stage, which lasts 16 days. But the bulk of the hostages that are going to be released come later, after 16 days, and then after 42 days.
Right.
And that's what the Israeli public are waiting for. That's what they want. They want them all back. No, because they've seen them, and they've seen what state. Most of them are alive still. I think that surprised people. Most of them, they're in reasonably good health, as you can see on the.
Yeah, that's the second group of 4. They looked extremely healthy and extremely happy, in very good shape. It was wonderful to see all the crowds, wasn't it? And also to see Hamas, obviously very good shape, very smartly arrayed, and very much survivors of all these months of bombing and fighting. But it was also so good to see the people back, to see them coming home, even though they're coming home to nothing. I don't know how they're going to live in the northern part of Gaza.
On the video now.
And to think that they are actually saying nice things about the way their captors treated them has to be boggling Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir's mind.
Absolutely. It's absolutely causing chaos. And at the same time, we have not only that, but also the Trump administration, or the putative Trump team, were responsible for the ceasefire in Lebanon that was supposed to, Israel was supposed to have left Lebanon yesterday, and they haven't done so. And they're saying now that they're going to stay till the 16th of February.
So obviously the Israelis have broken the conditions of the ceasefire already. I'm talking about the other ceasefire, in Lebanon. So that ceasefire is over, with the Israelis saying that they're going to stay until February 16th.
Well, there's been another a wave of population of the Lebanese coming down from the north, trying to get into their homes in the south of Lebanon. All of them parading Hezbollah and Hamas flags. I mean, at the moment, they're stopped. But, this is actually very good news for Hezbollah, more than anything else, because, this is what Hezbollah is saying. Look, you, the new government, the Saudis and the Americans, you've installed President Aoun, and he's supposed to take over, and Hezbollah is supposed to stand down and be pushed away from the political front. And look, you're incapable of even managing a ceasefire with Israel. You're incapable of getting the Israelis out of that. Your agreement was worthless. And so, again, it puts Trump on the spot. And then, that I think with this, what's going on, I mean, in a sense, we've got a split screen presidency taking place. What Trump has been saying about on the sort of issues of particularly the cultural issues, about DEI, about what he's saying about free speech, no more misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, attempts to use these to convey a single a unified position. All of this has to go. It shocked Europe. I mean, it's really, broken the narrative of Europe for the last 20 years in all of these about, the green scam, the how to run an economy, how to get the prices down. All of these sort of domestic issues is like a whirlwind hitting Davos, hitting Europe. And it seems as if they're intent on regime change in Germany and regime change in Britain. It looks very much as if the Trump team is going to engineer a change.
He's now talking about the impact on the Western world, as a whole, when you consider the relationship of the ceasefire to Trump and what he seems to be looking to do.
In both those countries to move it more closely to being more closely aligned with the Trump vision of the future, which many Europeans welcome, including me.
I want to play a
When he says that, he's assuming or interpreting Trump's vision of the future, to be one of American withdrawal from Europe and the independence of the NATO allies themselves. He assumes that that's what Trump is looking for, that's what his intentions are. And of course, as a European, he is saying that he agrees with that vision. of things. There are a lot of people here in America, however, I think not only people in the center and some people on the left, but also many people on the right who don't agree with that vision, who still thinks that we, the United States, should be dominating Europe every step of the way, and they should be following our lead. But Trump seems like he wants to get rid of that tie. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not aggressive. He's very aggressive in many other areas, like the various statements he's been making about Greenland and Canada, okay, and areas of South Africa and the Panama Canal and everywhere else, okay. But when it comes to Europe, he seems almost to be saying, hey guys, we're out, or we'd like to be out. And Alistair Crook really likes that.
Clip from a former Israeli negotiator. You may know him from your diplomat days, named Daniel Levy. This is from the Big Picture podcast. He has some astounding statements to make. This is about a minute and a half long, but it's profound what he says at the end. Here he is, Daniel Levy, cut number one.
One cannot underestimate the impact on the Israeli public psyche of the release, the initial 3 who were released. And of course, everyone therefore saw those images. They've been told Al-Qassam defeated. They've been told the public has turned against them. They've been told so many things. And then they saw those images. An occupying army, armed and aided by the most powerful military in the world, the US, a nuclear armed state.
Did you know that putting 3 drops of cinnamon under your tongue
Should be back in another second or so.
Israel. In a struggle between that and a resistance movement, we saw a very powerful display, and Israelis saw that. We're being told by Israeli analysts, talking heads, political leaders, and their backers in the West, that the next phase has to be to move forward. We have to have the demilitarization of the reality is the most significant force in Gaza by a long stretch is Hamas. Al-Qassam emerges from this with a very strong narrative. Israel's narrative doesn't look so good at all.
What do you say about that, Alistair?
Well, Daniel is exactly right on the button with what he's saying, but actually, and although you said it was shocking, he underplays it. The Israelis, I mean, in the Hebrew language, in their channels, are saying it much more bluntly. We've been completely defeated. Look what we see. we see Hamas on the streets of Gaza, running it, organizing. And as many people said, look at them. I mean, they're in smart uniforms. They have the latest Israeli weapons they've taken from them. They are managing, they are clearly in charge of Gaza. What was this war about? We've lost this war completely, is what they are saying. We've lost it. And one, Nahum Barnea, I know him also, he's a celebrated journalist. And he said, at the end of it, all we've done is we've substituted Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar, for his young brother, Mohammed Sinwar, who's now in charge of Gaza. That's all we've achieved. After all these deaths of Israeli IDF forces, after all this bombing and destruction, we have actually only achieved substituting Yahya for Mohammed Sinwar. That's it. We've been a complete failure. This is having a big impact, and coupled with the things that you mentioned to begin with too, which are very important, is Netanyahu's health is very bad at the moment. He's been making very powerful pleas to the court where he was supposed to appear today. And he's been saying, he hasn't healed from his operation. He can't manage. He's facing a wave of political crises. He can't cope with having to come to court, and he's really in a bad condition. And we know he's in a bad condition because we've been told by Gantz, the former defense minister, that he's recently had a pacemaker put in his heart, and it has to be monitored very carefully. And his family are not there. They are in Florida. His wife has been there for a long time and doesn't seem likely to be coming back. As you know, his son and his wife have been the power behind Netanyahu, driving him on. But there's been an internal struggle inside the family between particularly the son.
No one seems to know this, but Amazon actually has
against his father, maybe even involving physical attack. And that both of them have gone, and she is not returning. His wife is not returning. It doesn't seem at the moment she's returned at all.
So that's something we never knew before, or at least I never knew before, that apart from the political difficulties he's having, okay, apart from the war, apart from the stress of all that, his family seems to be breaking apart. And physically, he also seems to be breaking apart as well. Not feeling sorry for him, okay, or anything. He's the most horrendous kind of person. But we finally see that all the stress is starting to tell. And it makes
Right.
you wonder if the end is not near for his government and his genocide.
Yeah, see, I was thinking that his wife was with the son in the US for safety concerns.
Yes, I was thinking that also. I had no idea that there was an internal struggle in his home and that his wife had left him and his son also. So hopefully the end is near for him, from a political point of view,
Yes, I agree.
and we will have a change, and that this new government will be based on another kind of political coalition and will be willing to end the genocide in Gaza.
Oh, somebody says, "Hey, D." They have an F. I don't know who F is. Oh, hey, D, Doc, to Doc as well.
This is Netanyahu just a few hours ago, Alistair, going to where he absolutely does not want to go. A public courtroom in which he is a defendant in a bribery and corruption case. Did you say there was a physical attack between the son and the father?
There are reports of that by very serious. That's why, and that afterwards, because the son has been sort of exiled to Miami, where he is staying. And according to the report, Shin Bet, the security service, told him to get out of the country and go and stay in Miami. And his mother is there too, and she hasn't come back. She says she's got COVID, so she can't come back.
What is the relationship, if we know of it, between Netanyahu and Trump? Are they on a collision course?
Yes, I mean, they are politically, because Netanyahu can do one of two things. Either he can keep his coalition alive, or he goes ahead and he releases the hostages from Gaza, which is what Trump wants. Either he does what Trump wants, or he can't keep his coalition alive. He's caught in this element. And for Netanyahu, as you recall, because you just played a clip of him in the court session, it's very important that his coalition stays alive, because without that, it's going to be difficult to prevent himself ending up in jail under this criminal indictment that has been launched against him. So,
Chris, put up Netanyahu in court again, please. The B-roll. How does this play to the Israeli public when they see this, Alistair?
There is a little-known elusive frequency, which when activated can trigger the brain's higher functioning.
there is a huge turmoil. And what I was going to say, because, it's bringing out lots, not only in this, but in many other areas, corruption and, poor governance in Israel. And so the country is really sort of close to schism on this. And if Netanyahu declares that he's not going to proceed with Part 2, Section 2 of the release of hostages from Gaza, I don't know what will be the consequences of it. I don't know what will be the outcome. It will certainly cause a huge effect in Israel. And I mean, what Daniel Levy just said to you was absolutely, that was, he was talking about the first three coming up. Then we had the 4 military young ladies come out and, smiling and happy. And people want the rest back.
Wow.
All of the hostages out. And if he sabotages it, as he's promised, as Netanyahu promises Hamas will sabotage it, then his coalition is over. Then who's going to run, and what is going to be the policy of Israel? So far, I mean, even all the Israelis can see what's happened in Gaza after more than a year. There was Hamas in their bright uniforms, managing things, cheering crowds, 1.5 million of them heading back, even though there's nothing to go home to in the north of Gaza. They are determined to go back, and that is their place, and they're not going to be removed from it.
Wow.
And I think it was a bit unfortunate, Trump's comment about his suggestion that he's going to ask Jordan and Egypt to take these people so that we can clear out Gaza and then rebuild it with nice sort of condos like in Miami.
I think he was
That went
shooting.
down.
I think he was shooting
badly.
from the hip when he said
Yeah.
that. But we can discuss that. We can discuss that the next time we are together. Alistair, thank you very much. Thank you for your insight, as always. We'll look forward to seeing you again from another part of the world next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what I like about Alistair Crook is he always gives the human side of things, when he does assessments. The human side that accompanies the political side and how people are thinking of things. He always emphasizes that. And to me, that's very real. And so I love his interpretations. And I love to bring them to you also. But Dee, any comments?
No, he did fine.
Okay, so I noticed Friar Steve is here. So we have a number of Friar Steve comments now that came in. The F, hey D, hey Doc, that's Friar Steve probably.
Yes, that's what he said. It was him.
Yeah.
He says he's back on Facebook.
Right. So Greg Mallard comments, gold bug bullshit in relation to the judge and his sponsor. Steve Wolfbrand said, warfare is changing rapidly, as is our world. Yes, it very much is. Sandy says, very true, Steve. Musk must be crapping in his pants, says Sandy. I don't know if Musk is crapping in his pants as much as Larry Ellison, uh, um, um, Masayoshi Son, and Sam Altman, who were the three people getting into the huge joint venture that Trump had brought into the Oval Office to talk about it, okay, the other day. And that whole joint venture, of course, was going to be using the AI coming from OpenAI, which is Sam Altman's firm. Okay, I think Musk was probably happy to see, Sam Altman getting the crap kicked out of him by the Chinese. So I'm not sure it's Musk who's crapping in his pants. He was not part of the joint venture. And I think he was very jealous about that, and very envious. Steve Wolfbrand says, to live in rubble in your own land is better than living in exile. And so it may be, but there's certainly still a lot of suffering involved when you're in your own land and there are no facilities and there's no shelter and the water is very scarce and the food is very scarce. Robert Copeland says, most of the videos Joe Firestone does now are on issues I don't care anything about. So I'm on here a lot less now than I was a couple of years ago. That's true, Robert. I've just been concentrating on the international issues. As I said to Bonnie today in a conversation we had, I'm focusing on the issues that are most important for this world because they directly involve our survival. Specifically, I'm most worried about the threat of escalation to a nuclear war. And so I cover the issues that are very relevant, okay, for that. And so that's what most of my videos have been about of late. Sandy says, one woman said she was happy to be going back to her, quote, home, unquote, but she would be living in a tent. Yes, and as Steve said, to live in rubble in your own land is better than living in exile. Okay. And there are a lot of people in Gaza who feel that way. And that's why they came back to the north. Sandy says, hi, Robert. Robert says, hi, Sandy. Robert, what do you care about exactly, Steve says. Sandy says, I don't think Trump is going to do anything good. Well, I have to say, and I say this very grudgingly, because I had the same attitudes now towards Trump as I had before the election. Okay, I voted personally for Kamala. I did it because I thought there was hope, okay, that Kamala would change policy, even though she never said that she was going to do it. I just felt that someone who was at least compos mentis to some degree, and more capable of seeing reality, would try to make peace. And I also thought that Kamala, with her background and training, was not going to advance totalitarianism any further from the Democratic side. And as you know, I've been very afraid of the governance aspect of what Trump is going to do. All my efforts over the last 2 or 3 years were directed to creating a situation where there would not be a choice between Trump and some Democrat who was part of the mainstream. I was always talking against that. That's what the Dump the Corruption movement was about. But we were stuck with that choice. And the Greens were too far behind to have any immediate effect on that situation. So I voted against Trump in the most effective way I knew how. But now that Trump is in office and some things he's doing are already terrible, and I hope I get a chance sometime soon to talk to you about the fraud that he's perpetrating in the cryptocurrency area. I don't know if many of you know, but over the last few days after the launching of the meme coin, Trump is now worth on paper $58 billion. Before this, he was at, I don't know, 3 or 4 billion or something like that. But he has parlayed his election to the presidency using cryptocurrency to a fortune, a paper fortune of, $58 billion. That is astounding, incredible, a total violation of the Constitution. In my view, the domestic emoluments clause of the Constitution. And I think it's only one of the many great crimes that he's going to commit, this time around. But I do have to say, getting the ceasefire in Gaza was a very big improvement and a very good thing to do. And I don't know whether he will continue to do good things. I completely distrust him. He's surrounded himself I guess I'll characterize them as idiots of ill will. In other words, they're both idiots and they also have no goodwill to do anything at all. But somehow, well, I won't say anymore. There are lots of conflicting factors right now, conflicting trends that make it perfectly justified to say, as Sandy just said, I don't think Trump is going to do anything good. But I think he's done at least this one thing good already. And perhaps whatever his intentions and whatever the state of his will, either ill or good, he still may do some other things that have extremely good effects. And by the way, if the things he does takes away the risk of nuclear war, okay, then Robert, I will be talking much more on these live streams about the domestic issues that will then rise to the fore. So Robert was answering Steve and said what he cares about is Medicare for all, how to beat President Trump politically, how to make things better for the people of the United States. One of the things I don't care about, is BRICS. Well, I hate to say it, Robert, but it would be a very, very, very good thing for the people of the United States and for the economy of the United States if we somehow managed at some point in time in the future to join with the BRICS people as part of their economic effort. It would be very good if we don't get shut out of the economy being created, the world economy being created by the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Indians, all the people of the global South. I know we have to totally change our foreign policy before we would be acceptable to them. But that is, in the end, what I hope for. So for that reason, one of the things I do care about very much is BRICS and what is going on there, because it's a wonderful, positive thing that is happening to the world. Okay, Dee, you want to say anything at this point?
Well, Robert's concerned, yes. When we talk about BRICS and changes, we talk about leading to Medicare for all. It's combating the corporations, weakening the corporations. So with BRICS and that whole movement and other countries working together to be stronger, I mean, it could help us with our fight for Medicare for all.
It could help us with our fight for Medicare for all, but it could help us with our trading arrangements. Okay, it could help us with various win-win collaborations that are good for us too. The coming economic power of the Far East and the Global South is astonishing now. Utterly and absolutely astonishing. It will be the future, of humankind. And I want us to be part of it.
Same here.
I do.
And, when we talk about manufacturing more at home, getting back to where we used to be.
Yes. Yes, getting back to being significant as a manufacturing power, being in a position where we can contribute all kinds of new advances to the world in collaboration with other nations that are marching forward.
Right, and stopping this idiotic supremacy stuff with wanting to put in right-wing governments all over the world, coups all over the world. I mean, that's got to stop. Let's just work together.
Yes. We must work together now for the good of us all. And I think that's why BRICS is important.
Yes.
Friar Steve says, I think Trump will do what Miriam Adelson paid him to do. Okay, I have a couple of comments about that. The first comment is the word is that so far Adelson is behind what Trump is doing. I don't know what her reasoning is. Maybe she has come to the realization that the only way for Israel to survive is to find a way to live with the Palestinians. Maybe she's changed in that way. But the word is that she has not at all deserted Trump, that she's still in his corner. The other point that's to be made here is that if Trump's crypto deal stays alive for some time, then on paper, Trump is worth more now than Adelson is. She's worth about 25 to 30 billion right now, and he's worth on paper 58 billion. So there's a big question about whether he needs her anymore. I think we have to take that into consideration. Farias says, now I'm back on Facebook, and says, hey, Eve, yes, I see you.
And I just wanted to add that right now what's going on, the West Bank is under heavy attack.
The West Bank is under heavy attack, and it is so important that the fighting stop there too.
Yes, it is, and that's something Miriam Adelson most likely would be happy about because she wants all of that, what she calls Judea and Samaria.
Yes, I don't know if she's going to be totally happy about that because uh, any peace agreement that comes about there, where the solution is for two states, is going to involve the settlers having to move out. And of course, her money and Sheldon's money have for years been devoted to the settler movement. So if things develop in that way, that may be where she parts company with Trump. After all, bottom line, if Trump gets some real estate deals in Gaza, he probably won't care if the real estate deals are with the Israelis or with the Palestinians.
No, he wouldn't. And I'll tell you the one thing is the Palestinians would be more grateful.
Yes, they certainly would be more grateful than some of the Israelis, such as, Netanyahu.
And good old, what's her name? Daniela Weiss.
Yellow Weiss, yeah. So Friar Steve says Hamas sabotage it. Israeli government under Netanyahu is the one that has a bad time keeping their commitments. Couldn't agree more. One of the women hostages described her Hamas cash taker as having white porcelain skin. Oh, laugh out loud. I think there are some Palestinians that have white porcelain skin. Evelina says, by contrast, she was quite dark skinned, and I don't think it was a tan, although it might have been. Well, there are dark skinned Israelis, running around and have been for a long time. The Israelis, accepted immigrants from North Africa, from Yemen, and, from other areas of the world where people are, more dark skinned. And to a degree, they've blended into the Israeli population now. Politically, they're very important. They serve in the military. And it's perfectly possible that her skin was a lot darker than her Palestinian captor. Joe, how many people actually see your videos on all platforms? Okay, well, it's not a lot. The last few weeks, since the new year, we've probably been running, if you look at Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, if you look at all three, we've probably been running about maybe 75 people on all three platforms. For a while in November, right up until Christmas time, in October, November, and right up to Christmas time, we were doing more like between 150 and 200 on all the three platforms. But I think during the holiday season and thereafter, a lot of the viewing really slowed down. But we are building up again now. So that's what I would say. How many people actually see your videos on all platforms? So, it's not a lot. I'm certainly not in the ballpark with all those who have thousands of people who watch their videos, or even hundreds of thousands.
And that's why it's important to share the show out all the time.
Yeah, that's why it's important. But I'm still going to keep on doing my videos because it's what I do. It's what I do, and I think it's important.
It is.
Friar Steve says, I was with you, Doc. I voted hoping Harris would change policy. Trump is going to carry on Biden's Zionist policy, but make it way worse. And that's exactly what is happening now. It's going to get worse. I'm not sure about that, Friar Steve. It's not because I think that Trump is a person of goodwill who wants peace. I don't think he gives a damn about it in itself. But I think Trump wants to make deals, and in Palestine, he wants to make deals with the Saudis. I think that is very important to him. And the word is the Saudis continue to exist on a solution in the Middle East that includes the Palestinians. So what is Trump to do? As long as the Saudis keep on insisting on that, he's got to find a way through. He can't do what his inclinations are. I mean, he keeps putting up these trial balloons about getting all the Palestinians out of Gaza, getting them into other places in the world, advocating, for ethnic cleansing. He keeps trying that, but he keeps getting slapped down by the Arabs every time he tries it. So, I think ultimately Trump is a practical man in certain ways. And if he thinks the only way to make a deal with the Arabs is to make a deal that provides for the safety of the Palestinians, okay, I think he will sell out, the Zionists, and he will do that. So that's why I don't think it's going to get worse. Now, the interesting thing, as we'll see when we get to the final article tonight, questions are arising about the extent of his will to make a deal with the Russians. That's something we'll have to talk about, a bit later. Trump scares me more than anything going on internationally. I have to say, Robert, I don't know. I don't understand how you can take that point of view, because what can go on internationally is global nuclear war in which we can all be wiped out within a few hours. Whatever Trump does domestically, it's not going to be that bad. It may be terrible. Maybe millions of us will die, but many, 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 many millions more will continue to survive. And the first priority is, after all, for us to survive and to have peace. Robert says, will it be a lasting ceasefire or will it be a temporary ceasefire? I think that very much depends upon which way Trump decides to go, and that in turn depends upon the continuing pressure from the Gulf Arabs to include the Palestinians in any settlement. I know there are people who think the Gulf Arabs are going to sell out the Palestinians once again, as they've been doing for a long time. But I don't think they're going to sell them out again, not this time. Steve Wolfbrand says, I'm going to start Steve Coin, get in early. On that, I have a couple of things to say. Okay. I wondered how well various celebrities whose politics are much better than Trump's could do if they start their own coins. People who are well known. For example, what happens if Bernie Sanders started a coin, for example? Could he suddenly be worth $25 billion or $30 billion. I don't think he could get to the place that Trump is, because Trump's coin, okay, is getting fed by the billionaires and them buying shares, and Bernie's not going to get that kind of support, but he might get the support of millions, okay, of persons, and that might drive the value of the coin up, and he might end up a multi-billionaire. And I have confidence that if he did, he would use that money to benefit us all. And I'm not just, talking Bernie now. There are Hollywood celebrities, football celebrities. There are many, many celebrities that, do have good values, or at least far better than Trump. And if they can work the coin front, to develop total fortunes in the neighborhood of, $500 billion, that wouldn't be as much as the right-wing billionaires have. But it might be enough to get the message through and to compete with their super PACs. Anyway, that was an idea I just was floating around in my head, today. Anyway, as far as Steve doing well or Joe doing well by starting our own coin, I'm not sure that's going to work. And Robert says, if you want to talk about BRICS, then tell us what is good and bad about BRICS. Well, that's not what this show is about, but I cover BRICS usually through what Pepe Escobar has to say about it. So if you come to the shows, whenever Pepe does a blog, I cover that. And I cover BRICS, okay, as part of that. And there are good things and bad things. Sandy says, who on earth would want crypto? Well, there are people fooling themselves about crypto considerably. And the problem is, when people en masse fool themselves about something, that something can become very, very significant. And then there are people who are not fooling themselves about crypto, who know very well what it is, but they still want to buy crypto because they want to go along for the ride. In other words, they think that, there are some people anticipating the federal government putting $200 billion into crypto. Now, somewhere, I have to confirm that. I haven't really looked it up, but the market cap of Bitcoin right now is supposed to be somewhere around $2 trillion. If the federal government, that, as we all know, has unlimited amount of money, decides to spend $200 billion on crypto, when that is bought, that's going to goose the crypto market. And who's ever in it at that time, if they cash out before the crash, they will make a very good gain on it. I think the possibility is there that an invasion of the crypto market to the tune of $200 billion could goose the whole thing by maybe 10 times. So we might be, instead of looking at 100K Bitcoin, which is what we're looking at now, we might be looking at $1 million Bitcoin or something like that. So, there's a potential to have a short-term gain of 10 to 1 before the crash. So the question is whether smaller people can get in and avoid being victimized. Because what's going to happen there is the whales, the crypto whales, who are, dominating Bitcoin, and I think they now have about 70% of the market cap is what the whales own. So the whales dominate the situation. It's not really a free market. And the whales are clearly manipulating the situation. Like a couple of days ago, Bitcoin was at 106. Last time I looked, it had dropped, just lower than 100 and then went back to 100. So what was happening? Well, clearly the whales were taking profits when it was at 106. They were selling and they were taking profits and they were driving down the price. Okay, but you got to believe that the whales are going to be ready to goose up the market cap if and when Trump puts 200 billion US dollars into crypto. And probably there's going to be a big explosion for a very short time. And then for the small people, the problem is going to be reading the signs and getting out in time before the whales start taking profits. Once the whales start to take profit on that kind of boom, I think things are going to be very difficult for the small people. They got to put stop losses on it, get out quickly. So sorry to go off on a tangent, Sandy, but you asked a good question. Fry Steve, it's a meme coin with no long-term value. Trump has secret deals dealing with Stargate. That's what we should all be concerned about. I know he has, but the Stargate has been undermined by the DeepSeek AI already. I mean, obviously he's planning this big announcement, and on the same day, the DeepSeek AI explodes. That was amazing. Fry Steve says, she gave Trump over $100 million. She will get something for her money. She's already gotten something for her money, Fry Steve. Why do you think Marco Rubio is Secretary of State? That's one thing she got for her money. Sheldon and she have been backing Marco Rubio for years and years now, trying to get him in a high position. They got that. I'm sure that's not all she wants for $100 million. But after all, Trump got $250 million from Musk. So he's got to satisfy Musk too. I'm not saying he's got to satisfy Musk. I mean, he's much freer now that he's worth 58B himself. Robert says AIPAC will not want a two-state solution that will benefit anybody. I agree. Of course. Okay, but again, the $58 billion man might be much stronger than he was before in relation to AIPAC. Fry Steve, Trump will never do a deal with Palestinians. Fry Steve, Trump is a Zionist. Well, okay. I think above all, Trump is a greedy capitalist.
Well, that's what I was thinking too. He's a businessman.
He's not just a businessman. He's at one time in my life, I proudly said, I'm a businessman. But I was never the kind of businessman that Trump is. Trump is a greedy capitalist.
Oh, definitely. But he doesn't really have an ideology, I don't think. It's just all about money.
I don't think he has an ideology either. Okay, now his son-in-law and his daughter may be a little different.
Right.
Because, they converted, his son-in-law was an Orthodox Jew. And she converted to Orthodoxy also. And their children are being educated that way. Fry Steve, let me give you one example, Doc. Biden still sold Israel $2,000 but banned them from using it. Trump money, way worse example number one. Oh, I agree. I agree with you, Steve. Trump is an irrational actor that is the opposite of rational man. Well, I agree with that too, but he has his rational moments, especially when he's motivated to make money. I agree Trump domestically has been bad so far, Doc. taking this out of who was taking us out of. Climate change, no one is paying attention to the bird flu. Raiding blue states and cities, taking away undocumented working class. Yeah, I agree. He's been terrible so far, domestically terrible. Fryer says Bernie would not scam people. Meme coins a scam stock. That's not what Bernie. I agree. I agree. Meme coins are scams, but they don't have to be scams. If someone issues a meme coin and is quite open about it, and is someone who's obviously interested and dedicated to supporting the people, then if people buy into that particular meme coin, they know what they're doing. They know they're trying to get the value of that up to such a degree that parties they can trust may emerge with $25 billion, $35 billion, $58 billion. If that happens, okay, then it may be they'll do very good things for people with their money. So, as far as I see, Bitcoins are not meme coin. You can't mine the meme coins. Yes, I think that's true. I was wondering where the mining comes in. Bitcoins, okay, are not actually meme coins. By the way, there's a relationship between the meme coins that Trump is selling and Solana cryptocurrency. Okay, specifically, the meme coins of Trump are hosted on the Solana blockchain. So there's some kind of relationship between Solana and Trump. You have to ask what Solana is getting out of it and what that's going to do to Solana's cryptocurrency. Evelina asks, Nigeria's just joined BRICS, bringing them to 55% of the world's population represented. Just to remind people that I forget exactly what it is, but population of Nigeria is the largest in Africa. It's in the neighborhood of 215 to 220 million people, I believe. That was the largest of the dominoes still to fall in Africa for BRICS. It's a country 2.2 times as large in population as South Africa, which was, of course, the first of the African countries to get into BRICS. Yeah, 55% of the world's population represented. Thank you, Evelina, for introducing that into the discussion. Crypto coins is nothing but a gamble where you can lose everything, okay, in my opinion. Yes, I agree. It's certainly a gamble. And meme coins, I mean, if you go into meme coins, that's not an investment, and you shouldn't be looking at it that way. There will be 21 million Bitcoin mined. You should read the white paper again, okay, on Bitcoin. I don't know what you're trying to say, Friar Steve. I know Bitcoin, okay, is limited and constrained. That doesn't stop the value of the market value of Bitcoin shares from going up and up, okay, and up. I mean, it hasn't stopped it. And it looks like it's not going to stop it up, in the future. So I know there are limitations on the mining. It's because the supply is so constrained and the demand is so strong that the value of Bitcoin keeps on going up. I mean, when you look at the history of Bitcoin back in 15 years ago, what was the price then? $1 a Bitcoin, $2 a Bitcoin, $3 a Bitcoin. There were certain people who invested like 20 or 30,000 at that price. Just a speculative investment, pure speculative investment. Nothing in back of it whatsoever, just constrained supply. And today, because of the fantasy people have about that, I don't know where it is just today, but it was over 100,000 a couple of days ago. Can you imagine the return on a $30,000 investment? Nigeria, of course, is one of the largest pops and economies in Africa. It has the largest population and the largest economy in Africa. It's not one of them. It's the largest by far. Friar Steve says, yes, it is, Doc. Bitcoin is decentralized. Yes, it is. The Russian government owns Bitcoin. The Chinese government owns Bitcoin. Yes. Bitcoin will reach $1 million in the next 10 years. It'll reach $1 million even faster than that if we put in 200B, which Trump has been suggesting. We're driving Bitcoin up and up and up. Of course, it would be a disaster if people started accepting Bitcoin as an actual currency, if we allowed people to pay taxes in Bitcoin. That would be awful. It would threaten our monetary sovereignty. Elon Musk has an office in the White House and one at Mar-a-Lago. He no longer has an office in the White House, Friar Steve. He was kicked out of the White House. He's now in the old executive office building, the OEOB. Elon Musk, right. And he has one at Mar-a-Lago. Yes, he has one at Mar-a-Lago, I know. Sandy says, I agree, Robert. Robert says, Trump is a corrupt businessman. He is. You should listen to Michael Saylor on Bitcoin. Check out michael.com. Yeah, I'm aware of Michael's involvement, in Bitcoin. I've been familiar with Michael Saylor since he started the MicroStrategy company in the early 1990s. In fact, I once got interviewed for a job at that company before they moved their headquarters to Washington, D.C. So if you want to buy into a good coin, simply buy Bitcoin. Well, there are a number of good coins. Sandy says, I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you. Sandy says, Trump is a con artist. Absolutely. Bitcoin is digital gold. It is rare. After the last one is mined, there will be no more. That's what gives it its value. There's a community that will always buy Bitcoin. The last one will be mined in the 2100s, unless they change something. See, Cowboy Kitty. Steve Wilbrett says, Doc, why are you dissing my Steve coin? I'm sorry, Steve. Please forgive me. Cowboy Kitty says, Vivek is trying to be my governor.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. He's trying to become governor of Ohio, right? Yeah, then he would also be Lisa's governor as well. But if she has anything to say about it, he won't win. Vivek, yeah, crazy Vivek. Okay, the next thing is is a video piece from Scott Ritter. I think this discussion was very, very good. And so I'm happy to have it. But it does mean that we're a little more constrained in time than I thought, we would be. But we will try to do the best we can tonight. And what we can't finish tonight, we will do on Thursday. So that's the way that's going to be. But right now, we're going to move to the video from Judge Knapp and Scott Ritter, which was also pretty terrific video.
Population to say I'm supporting Israel to an extent that the Biden administration wouldn't. I mean, the bottom line is, hopefully these bombs will be put into storage and won't be dropped. But if they're dropped, that means that Donald Trump is as guilty as Joe Biden was of furthering genocide, because that's all these bombs are used for. These bombs weren't used to blow up, military targets. These bombs were used to destroy civilian infrastructure and slaughter tens of thousands or more of innocent Palestinian civilians.
Switching to Russia and Ukraine, Scott, how dangerous is it for Trump to claim that the Ukrainians have killed 1 million Russian soldiers, that the Russian economy is faltering, and that President Putin's leadership is to blame?
So this is the introduction to the Realism in Ukraine topic for tonight. And Scott is going to hold forth on that. And Dee and I will comment on it as we move through this video. It's about how much of the video is left? I guess about 16 minutes.
I mean, this is absurd, but how reckless is it for him to say that?
I mean, it'd make a heck of a comedy routine on the Vegas Strip, but it's just it's so void of reality, and that's the danger. You see, Trump has come out and he's talked about hard love. We can do it. I love the Russian people. He put out in his Truth Social posting. I have great respect for Vladimir Putin, but if you don't do what I want, it's going to be hard love. We can do it the easy way, which is for you to fully capitulate to me, because I have deemed you taking casualties you can't afford to take, that your economy is failing, and it's all your fault, Mr. Putin. Or we can do it the hard way. I'm going to punish you. But the problem is the easy way that he talks about, none of that's true. The Russians haven't taken anywhere near the casualties that Trump has talked about. Russia has taken serious casualties. This is a serious war that's going on. This is high intensity conflict using the most modern weaponry, conventional weaponry imaginable. We here in the United States, even everybody in our military, have no clue whatsoever about what's the reality is on that battlefield, because none of our people have ever fought that kind of war. We're running out of people that even trained to fight that kind of war. All our people cut their teeth on the low intensity conflict of the global war on terrorism, which, while you're in the middle of a firefight, I'm sure is a hell of a bad day. But it ain't nothing like what the Ukrainians face: the mass slaughter, the mass death, the constant bombardments. We have no clue how to operate in that environment. The Russians are doing it, and they're winning. Every day they're winning more.
So that point that Scott is making right now, it's a very, very important point. He's saying that for all the modernization characteristics, of our army, and for all the talent some of our soldiers may have, we have no experience anymore in the kind of war that the Ukrainians and Russians are now fighting. And that is the most modern of ground wars, with the use of most modern technology. And our soldiers don't know what it's like to be in that kind of war, okay, anymore. That's a very important point, because it reflects our capability to intervene in such a war, and our capability to influence such a war if we were to intervene. If we do intervene, there would be a learning process, and it would be quite a while, as it was for the Russians and Ukrainians themselves. That's just something to keep in mind if any people are gung-ho for intervention inside of Ukraine.
And more and more. This is the a reality. Putin isn't losing his economy. Yeah, look, the sanctions have caused all sorts of hardships for the Russians, but they have adjusted, and they have adjusted in a way that allows their economy to grow, while the blowback on Europe's economy has been devastating for the Europeans, and it has also weakened our position. And leadership-wise, Putin won by a mandate far greater than anything Trump will ever experience in his life. So he's off base on this. The danger now is he thinks there's a hard way. But what is it? Keith Kellogg gave us a hint. And this shows you, I have to be careful in my language, but I would say the lack of lucidity on the part of the Trump administration, especially Keith Kellogg. He's going to lower oil to $45 a barrel because he has a simplistic argument.
Scott is about to embark on a very brilliant analysis. I give you fair warning.
Russians, he says today, with the $60 barrel cap, which the Russians have blown through, are making billions of dollars. You're right. But if we lower it to $45, which he calls the break-even point for Russian oil, then the Russians make no money and their economy collapses. That doesn't work that way, Keith. You see, the Russians have two break-even points. So one is what they need to balance their budget, because it's an oil-driven economy. They need around oil to be, above $60 a barrel, around $70 a barrel, $71 a barrel.
Right.
And if you drop it down to 45, they can't balance their budget. But the cost of oil production is $41 and lower, meaning that the Russians can continue to produce oil. Now, to get oil dropped to 45 barrels, we have to get the cooperation of the Saudis. Their break-even point is $85 a barrel. They're already losing tens of billions of dollars a month because of our desire to lower oil prices. They need the price to go higher, not lower. But if even if we bring it down to 45, they can produce oil at around $10 a barrel, which means they can just continue producing oil. Here's the kick. Permian Basin in the United States, all of the oil growth in the United States have taken in the last 4 years comes from Permian Basin. It's the benchmark for us.
Where is that? Where is that?
That's in West Texas. The break-even point for oil in the Permian Basin, there's two factors. One is existing wells, the old wells that have been in place. Takes about 33. If you sell oil at $33 a barrel, they break even. But that's not where the growth is. All of the growth is in the new drilling. And the new drilling break-even point, $66 a barrel. Hey, Trump, go to West Texas and sit down with the wildcatters. They're the ones doing all the new drilling of significance. Ask them how it feels to sink hundreds of millions of dollars into a project based upon the presumption of $78 a barrel oil, which the American government has promised them so they can put all their life savings in this. And you're going to tell them, no, we're going to have an economic war with Russia where we're going to drop the price of oil to $45 a barrel, and all of those new wells will drop. American oil production will drop 33% in 2 years. You know whose oil production won't drop? Russia and Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump has to be smarter than he is in going forward, and he needs to fire Keith Kellogg. Keith Kellogg has no clue how the world works, no clue how the world economy works, no clue how oil works.
Wow. He has to fire Keith Kellogg and hire Scott Ritter.
He's out there just throwing stupid numbers out there, and Trump's listening to him. Now, Vladimir Putin has to be laughing right now, saying,
well, where does Trump doing? This is a great explanation of the interplay of geopolitics and economics. A terrific explanation, Scott. Much appreciated. But back to this, the Russians have lost 1 million troops. Is he getting this from the intelligence community? Is he getting it from Keith Kellogg? What source would he rely on for something so outrageously inaccurate?
Well, one of the problems with the U.S. intelligence community is the politicization of intelligence. And there are a number of things. Ukrainian casualties, I believe the U.S. intelligence community was not allowed to independently calculate these numbers. That was forbidden. They had to totally rely upon the data coming from Ukraine so as not to create two sets of numbers, which then if presented to an American policy maker would say, why do we have two sets of numbers? They only wanted one set, so the U.S. intelligence community basically deferred to the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians are all over the map. Even the Ukrainians don't know how to lie convincingly about this. They say one number, they say another number, but that's the problem. Is the U.S. intelligence community has not been allowed to do the deep dig into these numbers, and if they did, they would come up with a number that is far reduced. He says 1 million. The bottom line is the Russian Ministry of Defense has probably suffered closer to 95 to 98,000 dead. Now that's a lot of dead, but it ain't 1 million. And then when you add in Wagner and the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Militias, Ministry of Interior Forces, etc., you probably get the number up around 150,000, which is a realistic number for Russian casualty deaths.
Now that's the largest number I've ever heard from Scott, from Colonel McGregor, and other people who have been trying to be as realistic as they can be about how many lives have been lost on the Russian side. So I think Scott, in making that estimate, is being conservative, that he's on the other side, on the high side of what has really happened in terms of fatalities. But I think he's trying to be as real as he possibly can about this.
in battle so far. That's a lot of guys. The 1.1 million, that's the number of dead Ukrainians. And that tends to be what happens with Ukrainian numbers. They mirror image. They reverse it. They say we've suffered a number which is what the Russians have suffered, and they say they've suffered what the Ukrainians have suffered. That's the Alice in Wonderland
Why
world.
start your negotiations with Putin by insulting him and insulting the Russian people?
It makes no sense, and I don't know how far he thinks he's going to get on this one. The Russians have straight up said, here's another absurdity, just to show you how far out of touch Donald Trump is. They put out a 100-day plan, leaked it to the press, and one of the aspects of it is that they want this deal to be done on May 9th, as if they're giving the Russians a gift. We're going to give Vladimir Putin a gift so that on May 9th he can declare that he surrendered to Donald Trump. May 9th is Victory Day. This is the 80th anniversary of the victory over Nazi Germany. Now, the Russians are very gracious, and they talk about the Allies and the role of the Allies, but everybody in Russia knows who beat the Soviets. It wasn't an American flag that went up on the Reichstag on May 2nd. It was a Soviet flag.
Who beat the Nazis?
Beat the Nazis, that's right. Everybody knows who beat the Nazis, and it was the Russians who did it. 60 to 70% of the German divisions were destroyed by the Soviet army, not by the American army, not by the Allied army. And this anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the defeat, is a huge, huge deal. Donald Trump would be better off calling up Vladimir Putin and saying, hey, I'd like to send an American delegation. Let's send the 82nd Airborne and 101st Airborne to march in your parade, to join you in the celebration of the defeat of Nazi Germany. That would be the best negotiating ploy. If he did that, he'd have Putin eating out of his hands. But instead, he wants Putin to sign on to an agreement that is, in effect, a surrender for Russia. It's just never going to happen. A nation that lost 27 million dead to defeat Nazi Germany isn't going to turn around and surrender to the very Nazis that continue to rule in Ukraine today. Here,
a very, very strong central point. Russia will never agree to surrender to this Nazi-infested regime inside of Ukraine that it is clearly beating to a pulp on the ground right now, okay, as we speak. By the way, the Russians have just crossed the river and are attacking the area, okay, Kherson. Just so you know, the whole of Kherson is about to fall to Russia.
Here's President Putin on Saturday about what the U.S. will need to do with respect to Zelensky. Cut number 3.
The current regime in Kiev is happy to receive hundreds of billions of dollars from its sponsors. Excuse me for the simplicity of popular expressions. As we say among the people, they are like hamsters chewing with pleasure these hundreds of billions of dollars on both cheeks. But they are in no hurry to follow the instructions of their sponsors, and we know that such instructions exist to cancel the adopted decree banning negotiations. But I think that in the end, those who pay him money, they should still force him to do it. And I think he will have to do it.
Can you guess if one of these foods makes arthritis pain worse?
Does the United States force him to sit down with Putin, or does the United States get rid of him and replace him with someone who will be more realistic?
But you missed the point, Judge. It doesn't matter what the United States wants. Putin will never sit down with Zelensky. Zelensky is an illegitimate leader who hasn't had elections. Putin has already called him illegitimate.
Well,
Putin will never meet with Zelensky. No Russian official will ever meet with Zelensky. The reality is the United States must remove Zelensky and then bring in somebody who is going to be able to negotiate what is the terms of surrender. Russia isn't going to make a deal with the United States. I don't know why Trump doesn't understand that. What Trump needs to do is think strategically. Stop talking about Ukraine, because Russia won that war. Accept that Ukraine is defeated, accept that NATO lost its bid, and accept that the United States isn't going to get what it wants out of this, and focus instead on the larger strategic picture of, or question of, what will European security framework look like in a post-Ukraine environment? That's the most important question. What will the role of NATO be in European security? What will the role of the United States be in NATO, and how do you balance that with a victorious Russia? That's where Trump needs to be focused. And if he did that, there's a deal to be made there. There's a really good deal to be made there. But in order to make that deal, you have to concede what Russia has already won, which is they have defeated Ukraine.
On the day after Trump was inaugurated, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping spoke on the phone for 90 minutes. How significant was that?
It's as significant as every single one of the meetings between these two. I always remind people that before the special military operation began on February 24th, 20 days prior to that, on February 4th, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping met in Beijing, where they basically inked a strategic agreement, a 5,000-word agreement that talked about how they're going to join forces against the United States to defeat the rules-based international order. And they haven't lost purpose or sense of direction ever since then. You know, Donald Trump can have a short conversation with Xi Jinping, and the Donald Trump is the president of a very powerful country. There's no doubt about that. The Chinese will take that call and listen.
Yeah, but does Donald Trump, does Marco Rubio, does Keith Kellogg, do they understand this?
No, they don't understand anything. They labor in this artificial world that they've constructed of American primacy, and you know, there's ways for America to leverage its considerable strength, and it has considerable strength, but there's ways for America to bleed off whatever advantages it has. For instance, seeking $45 a barrel oil, that's a suicide pill that will destroy the American economy. You know, so Trump really needs to start dealing with reality, and instead he's just a lot of bluster, a lot of bluff. And for a man who says that he doesn't want to get in wars, you know, he's moving us, inching us towards conflict all around the world right now. This is a very dangerous situation because he apparently doesn't understand the reality of the world.
How much longer can, well, before I ask you that, has the spigot been turned off to Ukraine, or is there still military hardware and ammunition in the Joe Biden pipeline still making its way to Kyiv?
That I can't give you a definitive answer. There's been a lot of contradictory information coming out in the press. Even the Biden administration or the Trump administration isn't clear on what exactly the orders have been given. We know, for instance, that USAID, the non-military aid, has been cut off, and that the embassy has issued instructions to that. Rumors about him firing the officials in the Pentagon who were responsible for that haven't played out with demonstrable fact. My guess is that there's still material.
Here's a brand new, better way to sell your house. So if you're thinking about selling anywhere in
One last ad before the end. One last big buffer to go through.
In a pipeline, and that pipeline is trickling material into Ukraine, but that anything that required additional approvals from a Trump administration isn't going to go forward. But those where all the final paperwork have been finished, that will go in. But this will be devastating for the Ukrainian government. I think Putin has said, and Zelensky has pretty much acknowledged, that 2 weeks after the United States cuts off military aid, that's it for the Ukrainians. And I think that this may be one of the goals and objectives of Donald Trump, is to basically destroy the Ukrainian ability to resist by eliminating American weaponry. And then you have Russia, creating a reality that can't be ignored.
Scott Ritter, thank you, my dear friend.
Okay, so that's it. I think Scott is making the case that Trump has terrible advisors still. He may want peace. But it's going to be quite a task to get peace while working with the advisors that he's working with right now. So,
well, and Axios had said that the U.S. Army transfers 90 Patriot missiles from Israeli warehouses to Poland for delivery to Ukraine. Axios is reporting that's an Israeli source.
Okay, say that again. They're doing what?
The U.S. Army transfers 90 Patriot missiles from Israeli warehouses to Poland for delivery to Ukraine.
And what will the Patriot missiles do?
Who knows?
Are the Patriot missiles going to stop the Russian hypersonic missiles?
Who knows?
I don't think so.
It was interesting that he had said that different information is coming out. And so you don't know what to believe and what not to believe.
What I believe is that the Patriot missiles were used by the Israelis. Other missiles were used in the Iron Dome system. also different levels of defensive missiles were used to protect the Israelis from attacks by Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iran, and that the Iron Dome towards the end of this last period was getting beaten again and again and again by inferior to missiles to what the Russians have. I don't think the Patriot missiles are going to matter a damn to this war. It's just another foolhardy move by the collective West. Just my opinion. Variety. So we had this conversation before. Bitcoin is here to stay. The U.S. government will soon be using it. Michael Saylor's company was the first. Many will follow. Again, Doc, read the white paper. They can't change it, the community, when I allow. Satoshi had the perfect plan. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Friar Steve. But until the government declares Bitcoin as being a means of paying for things and a means of paying for taxes, things are not going to fundamentally change with respect to the currency of the United States. The US dollar is going to be something that every American needs. It will not be replaced by Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is not, and never will be, in my view, the sovereign currency of the United States. Face it, Friar Steve. That is the truth. Cowboy Kitty says, we legalize weed and abortion were based on the qualified immunity. Is next. I think you're saying qualified immunity is the next to go, Cowboy Kitty. It may be. Robert always tells us Scott Ritter is one of his least favorite people. Cowboy Kitty says Scott Ritter is garbage. He lost me at I'll fight you for burning the flag. Oh, okay. Yeah, on RBN. Okay. Like, sure, dude, I know you're a Marine and big and probably can kick my ass. Well, Scott is getting a little old and a little heavy these days. Friar Steve says the Russian economy is tanking because of the war. Yeah, the Russians have economic problems because of the war, no doubt. But they still have an economy. Last I looked, all the Ukrainians had was American money propping them up. They don't have an economy left. Okay, the Russian economy has problems. It is not tanking because of the war. That is a fantasy. Cowboy Kitty says, but I have a Second Amendment to back up the first. Okay. Friar Steve, Russia's using the arsenal of the entire Soviet Union. It's depleting. They're not using the arsenal of the entire Soviet Union. I mean, their factories are operating 24/7, turning out all kinds of military equipment at this point. It's all new equipment. Friar says, Russia is fighting Ukraine, not a near peer, and they're barely winning. They're not barely winning. The Russians have killed 1.1 million of the Ukrainians. They're not barely winning. The population of Ukraine at the start of the war was 40 million. It's now 18 million. The state of Ukraine, the nation of Ukraine, is being destroyed. The longer the Ukrainians keep fighting, the worse it will be for them. the government of Russia is not fighting the U.S. or China. Well, of course, Russia's never going to be fighting China. If the U.S. were to be fighting Russia in that corner of the world, even if we put our whole army into Russia and left none of it for the rest of the world, we would be outnumbered by the Russians, maybe 4-1. And we don't have experience in fighting that kind of war anymore. For us, the U.S. is not, if we get involved, it will be with allies. Yes, allies who are inept and can do nothing. Russia does not have transparent elections. Assad had a 95% win rate in Syria after he fell. We now know that wasn't really the case. We never believed elections in Syria were fair. They were classical totalitarian elections. But in Russia, that is not the case by all accounts. Fry Steve says Trump will not be able to lower oil prices in the United States. U.S. oil companies have Trump in their pocket. What is that? That's why he raised prices the last time. The Russian oil is not coming on the American markets. So Scott works for the Russians. No one's going to hire him. He's already got a job. He doesn't work for the Russians. He sometimes writes for RT. Sometimes he writes as a freelancer. He gets paid as a freelancer. Friar Steve says 300K Russian losses believed to be. By whom, Friar Steve? Give me the link, please. Because all the military authorities that I'm aware of talking about this war say the Russian losses are in the neighborhood of 100K, not 300K, and certainly nowhere near what the Ukrainians are claiming. Is that number is what you want to believe? Russians, pro-Russian, it repeats that's what's put out on RT. No, he doesn't repeat what is put out on RT. He does his own calculations of numbers lost. Colonel McGregor does his own calculations too, based on various public records in both countries. They do their own calculations. No one from RT tells them what the casualty rates of the Russians and the Ukrainians are. Both of those people do their own calculations. Sandy says, Scott, tell us how you really feel. Frosty says, Trump doesn't follow history. Trump doesn't know any history. How could he follow it? Frosty says, Russia are not our allies. We will not march in their parade. Well, of course not. But that was a very constructive situation on Scott's suggestion on Scott's part. We would do a lot to make things much more friendly if we marched in their victory parade. Why not? It was our victory too. Friar Steve says, Zelensky definitely is a Jew Nazi. Scott is as pro-Putin as it gets. No, he's not. He's not as pro-Putin as it gets. Friar Steve says, can't take Ritter seriously. It's like, oh, you forgot about the Iron Curtain. There's no Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain was part of the Cold War. If there is an Iron Curtain today, it's because we're starting another Cold War. Putin is KGB to the bone, not our ally. Oh, God, Friar. Zelensky won by election. No such thing as a fair election. Russia under Putin. He killed every opposition to him in Russia. Well, I don't think I'm going to reply anymore because I just think you're reflecting a perspective which is wholly unrealistic. He says Finland and Sweden both joined NATO because of Putin's actions. They joined NATO because NATO pressured them to join and they believed the kind of nonsense that NATO and the US was handing out. Putin will never set foot in a Western country again. Well, maybe not. So what? Why does he have to set foot in a Western country again? There's a reason Trump wants Greenland, the same reason Putin wanted Crimea, the same reason China wants Taiwan. We can't support dictators anymore. Hey, Fryer, Taiwan is Chinese. It is part of China. Look at the State Department website. Putin wanted Crimea because Crimea was Russian. 95% of it was Russian. That's why he wanted Crimea. That's why he took it back. The only reason why it wasn't Russia was because in 1954, Khrushchev administratively handed Crimea to Ukraine. It was an arbitrary decision made by the then head of the Soviet Union. It had nothing to do with the reality of what kind of people were living in Crimea. There's a reason Trump wants Greenland, the same reason. No, it's not the same reason. Trump wants Greenland for the mineral wealth. He wants Greenland for the gas. He wants Greenland because it's positioned in the Arctic. And he wants to give the United States a strong position up in the Arctic, because the Arctic in some ways is going to be the future of trade, transportation, and he knows that and he wants a position there. Okay. Cowboy Kitty says, duh, laugh out loud. I don't think Poland is going to sit by and have Russia on their border. They will help Ukraine in every way possible. I don't think Putin wants to be on Poland's border. I think he's ready to settle with the Ukrainian buffer state between him, and Poland. But by the way, if Russia does decide they want to be on the border of Poland, there isn't a damn thing that Poland can do about it. So far, Friar Steve says the hypersonic missiles have not been that effective in Ukraine. Only 1 or 2. God, what kind of propaganda are you reading, Friar Steve? Bitcoin is decentralized. No one government will ever control it. That's why it's decentralized. I didn't say any government would ever control it. I said a $200 billion investment in it by the United States would influence the price, of Bitcoin. Look, consider the U.S. government to be a whale, relative to Bitcoin. At a $200 billion investment, the U.S. government would be the biggest whale. It would act in concert with the other whales to drive the price of Bitcoin up. So decentralized, schme-centralized. It is not decentralized. It's controlled by the whales. It just doesn't have a single actor controlling it. But it's controlled by the whales. Bitcoin is an oligarchy. You fool yourself if you think Bitcoin is decentralized. I know the ledgers are decentralized. I know. I'm talking about the ownership of the shares. That is not decentralized, no longer decentralized. Cowboy Cuddy says, these chats are being taken out of context. Laugh out loud. Love you guys. Ukraine will always be a nation, period. Eventually, they will join the EU. Oh, Fry. It's going to be a long 4 years. Poland wants a piece of Ukraine, can't pay your taxes with Bitcoin. The last photo I saw of Zelensky looks exhausted, a pawn in our game. I don't think he's a pawn in our game. I think he's a pawn in the neo-Nazis game, or I think he's just a guy trying to survive, and he doesn't have much chance. You're giving Trump every reason to take Greenland. I disagree. I'm not giving Trump every reason to take it. I'm explaining why Trump wants Greenland. I don't think Trump should take Greenland. For him to take Greenland would be a violation of international law. I think it would be a violation of the UN Charter, and I am not for violations of the UN Charter, and I'm not for Trump taking over Greenland. Ukraine has a UN chart. No doubt that, well, I guess there is a doubt. If what you're saying is that the Russian invasion of Ukraine was a violation of the UN Charter, I'm going to tell you that Putin has a contrasting legal argument for that. That Putin is legalistic, and Putin is a lawyer. I don't think that international courts will rule that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was illegal or a violation of the UN Charter, because Russia was invited in by Luhansk, and by Donetsk, by the two republics that had seceded from Ukraine. Their inviting in Russia was analogous to the people in Yugoslavia who invited in the U.S. intervention, but during the late the 1990s and early 2000s. Under the UN Charter, we had no right to begin bombing, in Yugoslavia. But we did bomb. And our legal justification was that we were invited in by some of the participants. And the Russians have the same legal justification for going into Ukraine. They also had a common sense justification, and that is that the armed forces of Ukraine were being built up by the West to be the largest in Europe, 600,000 strong, and they were being prepared for an attack on Russia. Putin just beat him to the punch, and he wasn't even ready for the war. He initially attacked with only 120,000 troops. Fereisty says that Zelensky is not neo-Nazi. I know he's a Jew. He certainly is a Jew, but he was captured by the neo-Nazi political forces inside of Ukraine. And that is also the truth. Taking Crimea is also a violation of international law. That was not cool. I understand, all of these aspects, but I'm telling you what the facts were inside, of Ukraine. By the way, the overthrow of the Ukrainian government in 2014, which preceded the taking of Crimea, was also a violation of international law. It was produced by U.S. intervention that was not in accordance with international law. First, you ignore treaties, Budapest Memorandum, Ukraine-Russia Friendship Treaty. No, I don't ignore that. But that was violated by the preparations of war by Ukraine, by the buildup of the unfriendly government. First, so when Serbia seeks independence, I look forward to seeing who invites them in. I don't think Serbia is going to invite in Russia right now anymore. And last I looked, Serbia was independent. I mean, it's independent now, isn't it? Okay. I think that does it for that part. We've been on for 2 hours and 36 minutes. So, Dee, do you want to finish with the article?
Okay.
Okay, or do you want to wait for next time?
It's up to you what you want to do.
Okay. I think we're on for long enough this evening.
I think so too. I mean, I could also put a show together tomorrow night we can discuss.
Okay, that would be fine. If you want to save the Alistair Crook article for the show tomorrow night, that would be fine.
Yeah, that would work. And this way you're not going to get yourself behind.
Yes, I think that's good. So, Fryer says Cowboy Kitty gives us some icons. Fryer says Doc 2014 was the Euro Maidan, Crimea annexation required Wagner Group, Little Green Men. That's a coup. Yeah, Euro Maidan was a coup also. It was a coup powered by the neo-Nazis in the right sector inside of Ukraine. And following the coup, the first thing they did was oppress the Russian population of Ukraine. All this is very well known and is accepted by most authorities in the field of international relations. And you, Friar Steve, are reflecting U.S. propaganda in your perspectives on this. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
Okay, I guess on that.
Yeah. I mean, look at what John Mearsheimer has to say. I mean, look at what Jeffrey Sachs has to say. It's not all Scott Ritter. Look at what Colonel McGregor has to say. Look at what Matt Ho has to say. Look at what Max Blumenthal has to say. Look at what Danny Davis has to say. Dozens. Oh, I forgot also the Duran people. Look at what they have to say. I mean, all of us agree on the narrative about the real start of the Ukraine war in 2013 with the Euromaidan. That was not a victory for democracy. They overthrew a leader who was legitimately elected in what international observers viewed as a free election. My perspective, oh, come on, Friar Steve. It doesn't come directly from the people of Ukraine. I talk to them, not the Russians. Maybe what you ought to do is talk to both sides, Steve. I know you're not talking to the people of Ukraine because, first of all, half the people of Ukraine have left. More than half the people of Ukraine have left. Okay, and those who remain, I don't know what those who remain think, but I do know they haven't had a democracy there ever. Never. The government after the coup was run by the neo-Nazis, and what happened with the regime there is that they outlawed all the parties except the right sector parties.
Right, and Victoria Nuland was hanging out.
Oh, Fries, every person you name is either on the payroll of the Russians or of the... Come on, Friar Steve. You think Jeffrey Sachs is on the payroll of the Russians? Are you nuts? I mean, you think Max Blumenthal is on the payroll of the Russians? You think Colonel McGregor is on the payroll of the Russians? You think Danny Davis is on the payroll of the Russians? You think I'm on the payroll of the Russians? I mean, you're nuts. And Euromaidan was about, I don't care what they said about what it was about. I know it was an illegal overthrow of the legitimate government of Ukraine. It was a coup.
And we remember that, and Victoria Nuland was celebrating.
And she was celebrating with chocolate chip cookies. Okay.
Okay.
So, Doc, I can put one on the show if you like. I'm still in contact with people in Ukraine, activists that were there. I'm sure there are lots of neo-Nazi activists still in Ukraine. I know you can put me in touch with those neo-Nazi activists. What you can't put me in touch with are people who were supporting the legitimate government of Ukraine before 2014. I will send you the receipts. They all work for RT. You're just following that. Douglas McGregor works for RT. Danny Davis works for RT. First of all, I have to say that it is illegitimate to say that those who have written for RT are following the Russian line. That's not the way RT works. But even if you think that's the way RT works, most of the people I mentioned don't publish articles at RT or Sputnik.
Friar Steve, by saying what she was celebrating was her job as a diplomat, I mean, that's MSNBC.
What she was celebrating was her success in fomenting the coup in Ukraine and selecting the successor of the legitimate president of Ukraine. Then why aren't there any neo-Nazis in the parliament, Doc? I don't know why there aren't any in the parliament. I don't know if I accept that. But furthermore, there are neo-Nazis in the army and there are neo-Nazis in the government.
Yes, there are. Yeah, in the government there are neo-Nazis, and when we say neo-Nazis, these are the real deal. They're the descendants of the real Nazis.
They're descendants of Stefan Bandera.
Yes.
And his group in the Second World War. Sandy Degg says, have a great night, everyone. And Lana Dell says, Victoria Newland is a cruel ghoul. He is absolutely a cruel ghoul. Okay, great. So let's end this wonderful discussion that we're having tonight with all the fireworks. Let's all sleep well tonight.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for
gonna
being
say
here, and
goodnight.
thank you for the conversation.
Thank you for such a lively conversation. And don't forget to like. I got only 3 likes on my screen, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed this far more than only 3 likes. Okay, but for now, I'm going to say goodnight. Oh, as far as Steve says, D, I sent you an article from BBC. I'm sure that article is completely unbiased, Fryer, because it's from BBC. Are you kidding us? I mean, get some fairly neutral publication. Just as you completely diss what comes out of RT, we completely diss what comes out of MSNBC and CNN and BBC. I mean, all of these places are anti-Russian, and they have been for many, many, many years.
And the BBC, like they said, the Mossad and a lot of them, these
so Friar Steve now defends the Nazi Azov battalion. They're defending their land, that's it. Yeah, with Nazi symbols tattooed on their arms and on their chests. Come on, Friar Steve.
Well, if Friar Steve wants to be a Nazi, he can be one. I mean, you know.
Friar Steve isn't a Nazi. I'm not calling Friar Steve a Nazi.
I know you're not, but if he's supporting them.
The Azov battalion is full of neo-Nazis.
Right, the real deal Nazis. They are Nazis.
The real deal Nazis who think that Stefan Bandera, who killed all the Jews at Baba Yar, was a hero. I didn't say RT was neutral.
RT has many different contributors from all over the world.
And many different point of views, but I'm not suggesting that RT is neutral. I mean, obviously, so Friar Steve is saying Reuters is neutral. I don't think Reuters is neutral either. Okay, but it is more neutral than BBC. I don't think France 24 is either. The whole collective West is anti-Russian. They're on their homeland, Doc, but Russia is not. The eastern part of Ukraine was part of the Russian homeland. It is known as Novorossiya. It has been Russian since 1786 until Khrushchev made his ill-fated decision to transfer that part that part of Russia to Ukraine. He thought it didn't matter because they were all part of the USSR. So he did it because his mother was Ukrainian and he liked Ukraine. So he did that. It was purely personal. Yes, Azov was formed after 2014. Yeah, it was formed after 2014 from the Nazis who with their armed power succeeded in the 2014 coup. Look, it's time for us to go. I'm going to say goodnight and end this particular discussion.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone.
At this point, thank you, everyone. How does one get on the payroll? Just asking for a friend. Yeah, I want to know how I get on the payroll too. Okay, I'm going to end the stream.
Okay, good night. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night. Okay, good night, Dee, and thanks.
Good night. You're welcome. Good night.